the neighbor who never left. Jake had always wanted to live in the heart of Chicago, and when he found an old apartment with charm, creaky wooden floors, vintage fixtures, and an old-fashioned mail slot, he took it without hesitation. The building had a history, but he didn't mind. It felt like home. His next-door neighbor, Mr. Albright, was the first to welcome him. An elderly man, always dressed in a crisp button-up shirt with suspenders, he had deep wrinkles and a voice full of warmth. He often sat outside his apartment, reading the newspaper, and gave Jake a knowing nod whenever he passed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Mr. Albright looked up from his paper. "This building has a history," he said. "Good bones, but thin walls. You'll hear things at night, just the old place settling in. Don't let it spook you." Jake had laughed. "I'll keep that in mind." Their brief chats became routine. Mr. Albright had endless stories about the city, the way the neighborhood had changed, the people who had come and gone. His presence was comforting, familiar, like having an old friend just a door away. Then, one night, Jake heard something unusual. A soft shuffling sound coming from Mr. Albright's apartment. It was late, but he brushed it off. Maybe the old man couldn't sleep. A few days later, Jake casually mentioned his neighbor to the landlord while picking up his mail. "The old man next door is nice," he said. "Keeps to himself, but we talk sometimes." The landlord froze, her expression shifting from confusion to something close to fear. "Who?" she asked. "Mr. Albright," Jake repeated. "The guy in 4B. The landlord's face drained of color. "Jake. Mr. Albright passed away last year. That apartment's been empty since." A cold, creeping dread wrapped around Jake. "No, that's not possible. I see him all the time. Just yesterday, he was outside reading his paper." The landlord shook her head. "That's not possible." Jake's stomach twisted. He ran up the stairs, heart hammering in his chest. He knocked on 4B's door. No answer. He tried the handle. Locked. Pressing his ear against the door, he held his breath. Silence. Then, a soft shuffle from inside. Jake stumbled backward, his blood running cold. The hallway suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. He wasn't alone. That night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the echoes of Mr. Albright's stories replaying in his mind. The way the hallway always felt colder near 4B. The way the old man never seemed to leave his spot. The next morning, unable to shake the unease, Jake searched the building's archives. He sifted through old photos of past tenants until he found it. A grainy black and white image. A group of residents from decades ago. And there, in the background, stood Mr. Albright. In the exact same spot Jake had always seen him. The photo was dated 1976,